Hyun-soo looked out the window of his office at the mining colony below. The blue-skinned Vellani workers moved slowly between the machines, their large eyes focused on their tasks. They were peaceful people, always had been. That was why they needed human help to run the colony on Kepler 442b. The morning started like any other. The three suns of the Kepler system cast long shadows across the mining fields. Hyun-soo checked the daily reports on his desk. Production was good. The rare metals they pulled from the ground would help both Earth and the Vellani homeworld. Everything seemed normal. Dae-eun walked into his office without knocking. She never knocked. As the military advisor, she said she did not have time for politeness. Her black uniform was clean and pressed, but her face looked worried. "Sir, we have a problem," she said. "Long-range sensors picked up something big coming our way." Hyun-soo put down his coffee cup. "How big?" "Really big. At least 50 ships, maybe more. They will be here in 2 hours." The colony administrator felt his stomach drop. The Vellani had no warships. The few human security vessels at the colony were small patrol craft. They could not fight 50 enemy ships. "Who are they?" Hyun-soo asked, "Unknown. The ship designs do not match anything in our database. But they are not friendly. They dropped out of hyperspace in attack formation." Hyun-soo stood up and walked to the communication panel on his wall. "Jiwoo, get me a direct line to all department heads. Emergency meeting in 5 minutes. Jiwoo's voice came through the speaker. She was young, barely 25, but she was the best communications officer the colony had ever had. "Yes, sir. Should I contact Earth?" "Not yet. Let me talk to the department heads first." The meeting room filled quickly. The Vellani colony leaders floated in on their hover chairs, their blue faces showing confusion and fear. The human advisors looked grim but ready for action. Vel-Ani, the chief of the Vellani Council, spoke first. His voice was soft and musical like all his people. "Administrator Hyun-soo, we do not understand. Who would attack our peaceful colony?" Dae-eun pulled up a holographic display showing the incoming fleet. "These ships are heavily armed. Military-class vessels. Someone is coming here to take something and they do not plan to ask nicely." "What do they want?" asked another Vellani. "You," Dae-eun said simply. "Your people make excellent workers. Some species in the galaxy still practice slavery. My guess is these ships belong to slavers." The room went quiet. The Vellani had heard stories of other colonies being raided, entire populations taken to work in mines or factories on distant worlds. They had always hoped their friendship with Earth would protect them. Hyun-soo looked at his watch. 1 hour and 30 minutes until the enemy arrived. "What are our options, Dae-eun?" "Not many. We have 6 patrol boats and maybe 200 security personnel. They have 50 warships. We cannot win a fight. Can we evacuate?" "Not everyone. We might get some people out on cargo ships, but most of the population will have to stay." Vellani's large eyes filled with tears. "Then we will surrender peacefully. Perhaps they will treat us well if we do not resist." Dae-eun shook her head. "Sir, with respect, that is not how slavers work. They take what they want and kill anyone who might cause trouble later." The room fell silent again. Through the windows they could see Vellani families going about their daily lives, not knowing that death was coming from the stars. Hyun-soo made his decision. "Jiwoo, open a channel to Earth. Priority 1 emergency transmission. Sir, it will take 3 days for any message to reach Earth and 3 more days for help to arrive." "We do not have 6 days. I know. But we have to try. Send the message anyway." Jiwoo's fingers flew over her control panel. "Channel open, sir." Hyun-soo picked up the microphone. For a moment, he did not know what to say. How do you ask for help when you know help cannot arrive in time? "This is Administrator Hyun-soo of Kepler Station," he began. "We are under attack by an unknown hostile force. Approximately 50 warships, identity unknown. They appear to be slavers targeting the Vellani population. We have minimal defensive capabilities and cannot resist. Request immediate assistance. They are taking everyone." He paused, looking around the room at the faces of people who might all be dead or enslaved within hours. "If anyone receives this message, please remember that the Vellani were a peaceful people. They deserved better than this. Kepler Station out." Jiwoo boosted the signal strength and sent the message toward Earth. It would travel through space for 3 days before anyone heard it. 1 hour later, the enemy ships arrived. They were ugly things, painted black and red, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. The lead ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything the colony had. The attack began immediately. The enemy ships did not even try to communicate first. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, destroying the colony's communication arrays and defense platforms in minutes. The 6 patrol boats launched to defend the colony, but they were swept aside like toys. Daun coordinated the security teams from the command center, but it was hopeless. Enemy troops landed in huge transport ships pouring out by the thousands. They were tall and gray-skinned, with forearms and faces like angry lizards. They carried weapons that fired bolts of red energy. The Karathi, as they called themselves, moved through the colony with practiced efficiency. They herded civilians into groups, separating the young and strong from the old and weak. The old and weak were shot on the spot. The others were forced onto transport ships. Hyun-soo watched from his office window as his friends and colleagues were driven like cattle toward the enemy ships. Some Villani tried to resist, but their gentle nature had not prepared them for violence. The Karathi soldiers laughed as they struck down anyone who moved too slowly. Daewon burst into his office. Her uniform was torn and she had a cut on her forehead.
"Sir, we have to go."
"They are coming for the command center." "Where can we go?" "The colony is surrounded. The maintenance tunnels. We can hide there for a while." They ran through corridors filled with smoke and the sound of energy weapons. Behind them they could hear the heavy footsteps of Karathi soldiers and the screams of people being captured. In the tunnels beneath the colony, Hyun-soo and Daun met up with Jiwoo and 15 other survivors. They huddled in the darkness, listening to the sounds of destruction above. "Did the message get through?" Hyun-soo whispered. Jiwoo nodded. "Yes, sir. But even if Earth gets it today, help will not arrive for days. Then we wait and hope." Above them, the Karathi finished loading their prisoners and prepared to leave. They had what they came for. The Villani would make excellent slaves, and the few humans they had captured would bring a good price at the markets. The Karathi commander looked at the burning colony and smiled. Another successful raid. Another species added to the Empire's workforce. Soon they would move on to the next target. He had no idea that his message to Earth would bring something far worse than a rescue mission. He had no idea that humanity did not negotiate with slavers. He had no idea what was coming. 3 days later, the message from Kepler 442b reached Earth. Fleet Admiral Tae-jin sat in his office at Earth Defense Command, drinking his morning tea when the priority alert came through. He was an old man now, with gray hair and lines on his face from 40 years of military service. He had fought in 3 wars and seen humanity spread across dozens of star systems. But the message from Hyun-soo made his blood run cold. "Get me the tactical committee," he told his assistant. "Now." Within an hour, the war room was full of Earth's best military minds. Captain Minho sat at the main table, his young face serious as he studied the data from Kepler Station. Dr. So Young, the fleet's top expert on alien species, pulled up holographic displays showing what they knew about the attackers. "The ship designs match reports from 3 other raids in the past year," she said. "Same species hit a mining station near Alpha Centauri, a research colony in the Vega system, and a trading post at Wolf 359. They call themselves the Karathi Empire." Jae-hyun, the intelligence officer, added more details. "They are slavers, sir. They capture entire populations and sell them at markets across the galaxy. Our sources say they have taken over 50 different species in the past 10 years. Admiral Tae-jin studied the tactical display. Red dots showed where Karathi raids had taken place. The pattern was clear. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. "What do we know about their military?" he asked. Captain Minho answered. "They have a strong fleet, but they rely on fear and surprise. Most species they attack are peaceful, like the Villani. They have never faced serious resistance, and their numbers? Intelligence estimates at least 2,000 ships spread across their territory. But they usually attack in small groups of 50 to 100 vessels." Admiral Tae-jin was quiet for a long moment. The other officers waited for his decision. They all knew what he was thinking. The Karathi had made a mistake. "They had attacked humans, Dr. So Young," he said finally. "Tell me about Karathi psychology." The xenobiologist pulled up biological data on her screen. "They are reptilian, cold-blooded. They think in terms of dominance and submission. In their minds, there are only 2 types of species, those who rule and those who serve. They believe might makes right. So they understand strength?" "Yes, sir. But they have never seen real strength. Every species they have conquered was weaker than them. They think they are the strongest predators in the galaxy. Admiral Tae-jin smiled, but it was not a kind smile. Then it is time to educate them. He turned to his staff officers. I want every available ship prepared for immediate departure. Contact all fleet commanders. Tell them we are going to war. Captain Minho looked surprised. Sir, with respect, we are talking about one colony. Is it wise to commit our entire fleet? Captain, they did not just attack one colony. They attacked our people. Every human in that colony was under Earth's protection. The Karathi took them as slaves. That makes this an act of war against humanity itself. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what the Admiral was saying. This was not about rescuing prisoners. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Within 6 hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled began moving toward Kepler Forum 42b. 200 warships, including the newest dreadnoughts and planet-killer vessels. The pride of Earth's navy, all heading to one small mining colony. Captain Minho commanded the flagship, a massive dreadnought called Sol's Fury. As they jumped into hyperspace, he reviewed the fleet composition with his officers. They had enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Sir, his tactical officer asked, are we really going to use all this force against 50 raider ships? We are going to use whatever force is necessary, Minho replied. The Admiral wants to make sure the galaxy understands what happens when you attack humans. Dr. So-young worked in her laboratory aboard the medical ship Busan Hope, studying everything Earth's intelligence services had gathered about the Karathi. She examined their biology, their technology, their social structure. She was looking for weaknesses. What she found made her smile. The Karathi were strong individually, yes. Their technology was advanced. Their ships were well armed. But they had one critical weakness. They had never lost a battle. Success had made them overconfident. They did not know how to react when things went wrong. They expect their enemies to be afraid, she told Admiral Tae-jin over the communication link. When they show up, most species surrender immediately. The few that fight back are quickly overwhelmed. They have never faced an enemy that could match their strength. And what happens when they do face such an enemy? Based on their psychology? They panic. Their entire system of belief is based on being the strongest. When that belief is challenged, they do not adapt. They break. Meanwhile, intelligence officer Jae-hyun studied Karathi tactical data from previous raids. Their battle plans were always the same. Arrive in overwhelming numbers, destroy any resistance quickly, take prisoners, leave. They never expected a prolonged fight. They are bullies, he reported to the command staff. They pick on targets they know they can beat. When someone hits back harder than expected, bullies usually run. Admiral Tae-jin absorbed all this information as the fleet raced through hyperspace. The Karathi had made several mistakes. They had attacked humans, which guaranteed retaliation. They had taken prisoners, which made this personal. And they had assumed Earth would respond like every other species they had conquered. They were wrong on all counts. On the second day of the journey, the Admiral received another message. This one came from Karathi space, broadcast on all frequencies. It was a message of conquest, sent to intimidate any species that might consider resisting. We are the Karathi Empire, the message said. We are the strongest species in the galaxy. All others exist to serve us. Any who resist will be destroyed. Any who submit will be allowed to live as our slaves. This is the natural order. Admiral Tae-jin played the message for his senior staff. When it ended, the war room was quiet. Captain Minho spoke first. Arrogant, yes, the Admiral agreed. And that arrogance will be their downfall. He stood up and walked to the tactical display showing their destination. Gentlemen, we are not going to Kepler 442b to rescue prisoners. We are going there to end the Karathi Empire. All of it, sir? All of it. When we are finished, there will be no more Karathi raids, no more Karathi slaves, no more Karathi Empire. There will only be a lesson for the rest of the galaxy about what happens when you threaten humanity. The fleet jumped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system 12 hours later. Sensors immediately detected the Karathi ship still in orbit around the mining colony. They had not left yet, still loading prisoners and stripping valuable materials from the planet. 53 enemy vessels detected, the tactical officer reported. They are not in defensive formation. It appears they are not expecting trouble. Admiral Tae-jin looked at the display showing both fleets. The humans had brought 200 ships. The Karathi had 53. It should be an easy victory, But the Admiral knew this battle was not about winning. It was about how they won. The entire galaxy would be watching. Other species needed to see that humanity was not like the peaceful races the Karathi usually conquered. "Open a channel to the enemy fleet," he ordered. "Channel open." "Sir." Admiral Tae-Jin picked up the microphone. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold. "This is Fleet Admiral Tae-Jin of the Earth Defense Force. You have taken our people. You have exactly one opportunity to return them unharmed and withdraw from this system." The response came quickly. The Karathi commander's voice was full of mocking laughter. "Foolish humans. You dare threaten the Karathi Empire. We have conquered 50 species. Your people are already slaves. Surrender your ships or we will take you as well." Admiral Tae-Jin smiled. "I was hoping you would say that." The battle was about to begin. Commander Vektar of the Karathi flagship Blood Drinker looked at his tactical display and laughed. The human fleet had dropped out of hyperspace in a loose formation, just like frightened prey. 200 ships seemed like a lot to these humans, but the Karathi had destroyed larger fleets before. "Look at them," he told his bridge crew. "They spread out like scared children. They do not even know how to fight properly." His weapons officer hissed in agreement. "Should we destroy them quickly, Commander?" "No, let them see our power first. Maybe some will surrender and save us the trouble of hunting them down." Vektar had conquered 12 species in his career. Humans would be unlucky number 13. He opened a communication channel to taunt them before the slaughter began. On the bridge of Soul's Fury, Captain Minho listened to the Karathi commander's threats and insults. The alien's voice was full of confidence and cruelty. Minho had heard that tone before, from bullies who thought they could not lose. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "enemy ships are moving into attack formation. They are taking their time, probably trying to intimidate us." "Let them," Minho replied. "The longer they take, the better our targeting solutions become." Admiral Tae-Jin's voice came over the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Tae-Jin. Today we send a message to the galaxy. Today the Karathi Empire learns what happens when you steal our people. Today we show every slaver and conqueror in space that humanity is not prey." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Remember your training. Remember your duty. Remember that our people are counting on us. Execute Operation Hammerfall." Across the human fleet, weapon systems came online. Targeting computers locked onto Karathi ships. In the depths of each vessel, reactors pushed power levels to maximum. Commander Vektar was still gloating when the humans attacked. It was not like any battle the Karathi had ever seen. Most species fought ship to ship, trading energy blasts until one side was destroyed. The humans did something completely different. They fired everything at once. 200 human warships unleashed their full firepower in a synchronized strike that lit up space like a new sun. Kinetic bombardment cannons fired tungsten rods at incredible speed. Plasma torpedoes burned through vacuum like miniature stars. Energy beams carved through Karathi shields as if they were made of paper. And then came the gravity bombs. Minho watched his tactical display as the first wave of attacks struck home. 12 Karathi ships simply vanished, torn apart by forces they had never encountered before. Another 15 were crippled, their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "gravity bombs are functioning perfectly. Direct hits on enemy capital ships." The gravity bombs were humanity's newest weapon. Each one created a small black hole that lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to crush any ship caught in its field, but short enough to avoid permanent damage to space-time. The Karathi had never seen anything like it. Commander Vektar stared at his display in shock. Half his fleet was gone in less than 20 minutes. Ships that had conquered worlds were floating debris. His own flagship was damaged, sparks flying from broken control panels. "Impossible," he whispered. "No species has weapons like this." His communication officer turned to him, fear in his reptilian eyes. "Commander, the other Karathi fleets are requesting orders. Should they retreat?" Vektar's world was crashing around him. The Karathi Empire had never lost a battle. They were the strongest species in the galaxy. They ruled through fear and superior firepower. But these humans had just destroyed half his fleet without losing a single ship. "No retreat," he snarled. "All ships, attack. Show these humans the fury of the Karathi." The remaining Karathi vessels charged toward the human fleet, firing their energy weapons wildly. Their shots splashed harmlessly against human shields. The few hits that got through caused minimal damage. Captain Minho coordinated the human response with cold efficiency. Group Alpha, target their command ship. Group Beta, eliminate their escort vessels. Group Gamma, prepare boarding parties. Boarding parties, sir? His tactical officer asked. The Admiral wants prisoners alive for questioning, and we need to rescue our people from their slave ships. The second wave of human attacks was more precise than the first. Instead of trying to destroy every enemy ship, they targeted specific systems. Engine rooms were hit with surgical strikes. Weapon arrays were blown apart. Command bridges were destroyed with pinpoint accuracy. Dr. So-Young watched the battle from the medical ship, taking notes on Karathi reactions. Her research had been correct. When faced with superior force, the aliens did not adapt. They panicked. Their formation is breaking apart, she reported to Admiral Tae-jin. Individual ships are trying to flee, but their commanders are countermanding the orders. They are fighting each other as much as they are fighting us. Excellent. Fear makes them weak. Continue the assault. The Karathi fleet was dying. Ships that had terrorized dozens of worlds were being picked apart by human weapons they could not match. Commander Vektar realized that this battle was lost, but his pride would not let him surrender. Signal the slave ships, he ordered. Tell them to execute all prisoners. If we cannot win, at least we can deny the humans their prize. It was the worst decision he could have made. Admiral Tae-jin received the message within minutes. His face went cold as ice as he read the Karathi threat to kill all prisoners. Signal all ships, he said quietly. The enemy has just threatened to murder our people. Rules of engagement are now shoot to kill. No prisoners from military vessels. Rescue the slaves at all costs. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves closing in for the kill. Specialized boarding craft launched from the larger ships, their hulls bristling with cutting tools and weapons. These were not exploration vessels or diplomatic shuttles. They were designed for one purpose: breaking into enemy ships and eliminating everyone inside. Captain Minho led the assault on the Karathi flagship. His boarding craft punched through the enemy ship's hull like a bullet through paper. Inside, human soldiers in powered armor swept through the corridors, their weapons cutting down any Karathi who tried to resist. The aliens had never faced humans in close combat before. They discovered that humans were not just technologically superior, they were physically tougher, mentally faster, and completely ruthless when protecting their own people. Commander Vektar made his last stand on his own bridge, surrounded by dead crew members and sparking control panels. When the human soldiers found him, he tried to surrender. Captain Minho looked at the alien commander with disgust. You threatened to kill prisoners. You forfeited any right to mercy. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the Karathi raiding fleet. Not a single enemy ship escaped. Some were destroyed by human weapons. Others were boarded and cleared by assault teams. The few Karathi who survived were taken prisoner, but only the ones who had not been involved in guarding slaves. The slave ships were handled differently. Human soldiers moved through them carefully, freeing prisoners and providing medical aid. They found Villani families huddled in cargo holds, humans from the mining colony locked in tiny cells, and members of other species the Karathi had captured from previous raids. Hyun-Soo was found in the slave quarters of a transport ship, along with Da-un and 15 other survivors from the colony. When the human soldiers cut through the cell doors, he could barely believe his eyes. How did you get here so fast? He asked. The soldier helping him to his feet smiled grimly. Sir, when someone takes our people, we do not waste time. The entire Earth fleet came as soon as we got your message. As medical ships treated the rescued prisoners, Admiral Tae-jin stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the wreckage of the Karathi fleet. 53 enemy ships had been reduced to floating debris. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel, but the Admiral knew this was only the beginning. The Karathi Empire was vast, with thousands of ships and dozens of conquered worlds. This raiding fleet was just a small part of their military power. Sir, Intelligence Officer Jae-hyun reported, we have intercepted Karathi communications. News of this battle is spreading through their empire. Their high command is demanding to know how a primitive species destroyed an entire raiding fleet. Admiral Tae-jin smiled. Good, let them wonder. Let them worry. And let them know that this is just the start. He turned to Captain Minho. Prepare the fleet for the next phase of operations. We are going to pay a visit to the Karathi home system. Sir, are we sure that is wise? We accomplished our mission. Our people are safe. Captain, our mission was not just to rescue prisoners. Our mission is to make sure this never happens again. The only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they can hit you. The human fleet began moving toward Karathi space, leaving behind the wreckage of their first victory. In the distance, the mining colony on Kepler 442b was already beginning to rebuild. But across the galaxy, other species had detected the energy signatures of the battle. They had seen human weapons in action for the first time, and they began to understand that the balance of power in the galaxy had just changed forever. The Karathi High Command received news of the defeat at Kepler 442b 3 days later. Supreme War Leader Kethmore could not believe the reports at first. An entire raiding fleet destroyed by an unknown species called humans? It was impossible. Replay the battle data, he ordered his subordinates. The holographic display showed the last moments of Commander Vektar's fleet. Kethmore watched in growing horror as human weapons tore through Karathi ships like they were made of thin metal. The gravity bombs especially shocked him. He had never seen technology that could create black holes. How many ships did the humans lose? He asked. None, Supreme Leader. Their fleet suffered minimal damage. Kethmore's forearms trembled with rage. The Karathi Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. If news of this defeat spread, other species might think they could resist. The Empire could collapse. Send orders to all sector commanders, he commanded. I want 500 ships assembled at the Karathi Prime System immediately. We will show these humans what real power looks like. But Admiral Tae-jin had no intention of waiting for the Karathi to gather their strength. The human fleet was already moving toward the next target, a major Karathi military base called Fortress Kalar. Captain Min Ho studied the intelligence reports as Sol's Fury jumped through hyperspace. Fortress Kalar was heavily defended, with orbital weapon platforms and a permanent garrison of 75 warships. It was also a major slave processing center, where captured populations were sorted and sold. Sir, his tactical officer said, approaching target system. Enemy forces detected, Min Ho nodded. Signal the Admiral. Tell him we have arrived. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalar system and immediately faced a problem. The Karathi base was surrounded by hundreds of slave ships, their holds full of prisoners from a dozen different species. Any attack on the military targets would risk killing innocent people. Admiral Tae-jin considered his options. A direct assault would be fastest, but it might result in massive casualties among the prisoners. A siege would be safer for the slaves, but it would give the Karathi time to call for reinforcements. Dr. So-young provided the solution. Sir, I have been studying Karathi psychology and biology. I think I know how to turn their own people against them. Explain. The Karathi believe in absolute dominance. Their entire society is based on the strong ruling the weak. But what happens when someone stronger appears? According to their own laws, they should submit to superior power. You want us to challenge them to single combat? Not exactly. But we can use their own beliefs against them. If we can prove that humans are stronger, some Karathi might switch sides rather than die for a losing cause. Admiral Tae-jin was skeptical. These are the same aliens who just threatened to murder prisoners rather than surrender. The military commanders, yes. But there are thousands of ordinary Karathi workers on those ships. Guards, technicians, slave handlers, they follow orders because they think the Empire is unbeatable. If we show them it is not, some might help us. It was worth trying. Admiral Tae-jin ordered the fleet to broadcast a message on all Karathi frequencies. This is Admiral Tae-jin of the Earth. Defense Force, we destroyed your raiding fleet at Kepler 442b without losing a single ship. We offer the same choice to the defenders of Fortress Kalar. Surrender the prisoners unharmed and evacuate this system. Refuse and your base will be destroyed. The response came from the Karathi base commander. Foolish humans. Fortress Kalar has never fallen. We have 75 warships and orbital defense platforms. You will die here. I was hoping you would say that, Admiral Tae-jin replied. But this time, the human attack was different. Instead of overwhelming firepower, they used precision and psychology. Dr. So-young had prepared special weapons designed to exploit Karathi weaknesses. Sonic bombs that generated sounds at frequencies painful to Karathi hearing. Chemical agents that disrupted their cold-blooded metabolism. Most importantly, propaganda broadcasts that played continuously on all Karathi communication channels. Your empire is built on lies, the broadcast said in the Karathi language. Your leaders tell you that you are the strongest species in the galaxy, but humans destroyed an entire fleet without losses. Your commanders say you cannot be defeated, but human weapons are beyond your understanding. Why die for leaders who lied to you? The effect was immediate. As human ships closed in on Fortress Kalar, some of the slave ship crews began abandoning their posts. Dr. So Young's psychological warfare was working better than expected. Sergeant Wu Jin led the first boarding assault on a slave transport. His team of 20 soldiers cut through the ship's hull with plasma torches, expecting heavy resistance. Instead, they found most of the Karathi guards had already fled. The few aliens who remained seemed more confused than hostile. When Wu Jin's soldiers appeared in their powered armor, several Karathi immediately threw down their weapons and prostrated themselves on the floor. They think we are their new masters, Wu Jin reported to Captain Minho. They are surrendering because they believe we defeated their empire. Similar scenes played out across the slave fleet. Hundreds of Karathi workers abandoned their posts rather than fight what they saw as a hopeless battle. The few who resisted were quickly overwhelmed by human assault teams. But the military base itself was a different story. The professional soldiers and officers were prepared to fight to the death, rather than admit defeat. Their orbital defense platforms opened fire on the human fleet with massive energy cannons. Captain Minho coordinated the assault on the military targets. Group Alpha, eliminate the orbital platforms. Group Beta, target the enemy warships. Group Gamma, prepare to assault the base itself. The battle for Fortress Kalar was more difficult than the fight at Kepler 442b, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human weapons were simply too advanced for the Karathi to match. One by one, the orbital platforms were destroyed. The enemy warships were picked apart by precise targeting. When the last Karathi military vessel exploded, Admiral Tae-jin ordered the final phase of the operation. Assault ships landed on the fortress itself, carrying troops equipped with weapons Dr. So Young had designed specifically for fighting Karathi soldiers. The aliens had never faced an enemy like this. Human soldiers moved through the base corridors with terrifying efficiency, their armor protecting them from Karathi weapons while their own guns cut through alien defenses with ease. Da-un, who had been rescued at Kepler 442b and volunteered to help with the assault, led a team to the prison sectors. She found thousands of slaves from dozens of different species, all waiting to be sold at Karathi markets. This is where they process the prisoners, she reported to Admiral Tae-jin. Medical experiments, psychological conditioning, genetic modifications. They turn people into perfect slaves. The Admiral's face went cold as he read her report. The Karathi were not just raiders. They were monsters who deliberately broke the minds and spirits of their captives. Burn it, he ordered. Burn it all. The assault teams planted demolition charges throughout the base, focusing on the slave processing facilities. When they detonated, Fortress Kalar disappeared in a pillar of fire visible from orbit. But the real victory was not the destruction of the base. It was what happened afterward. Across the Karathi Empire, news of the second defeat spread like wildfire. A major military fortress considered impregnable had fallen to the same humans who destroyed the raiding fleet. Panic began to set in. Karathi commanders started abandoning outlying bases, pulling their forces back toward the core worlds. Slave ships were hastily evacuated as their crews deserted rather than face human weapons. Supreme War Leader Kethmore watched his empire beginning to crumble and made a desperate decision. Send a message to the human fleet, he ordered. Tell them we wish to negotiate. Admiral Tae-jin received the surrender offer as his fleet prepared to jump to their next target. He read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Sir, Captain Minho asked, should we consider their offer? We have accomplished our objectives. The prisoners are safe, and the Karathi military is in disarray. Captain, do you remember what happened to the last species that tried to negotiate with the Karathi? Minho checked the intelligence files. They were enslaved. Every man, woman, and child. Exactly. The Karathi do not understand mercy. They only understand strength. If we stop now, they will recover and resume their raids. The only way to end this is to end them. Intelligence Officer Jae-hyun provided updates on Karathi fleet movements. Sir, they are pulling back to defend their core systems. Our agents report massive panic in their civilian population. Some outer colonies are declaring independence from the Empire. Good. Fear is spreading faster than we could destroy their ships. But we cannot let them regroup. Admiral Taijin studied the tactical displays showing Karathi space. Red dots marked their major military bases and fleet concentrations. There were still thousands of enemy ships, but they were scattered and demoralized. All ships prepare for the next jump. We are going to hit their supply depot at Karathi Station 7. After that, we move on their shipyards. Dr. So Young monitored Karathi communications from her laboratory. The aliens were no longer bragging about their strength. Instead, their broadcasts were full of fear and confusion. They are calling us the 3 weeks after the destruction of Fortress Kalar, the human fleet arrived at the edge of the Karathi Prime system. What they found there made even Admiral Taijin pause. Supreme War Leader Kethmore had assembled the largest fleet in Karathi history. Over 800 warships surrounded their homeworld, including massive dreadnoughts that had never been used in battle before. It was an impressive sight. Enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Captain Minho studied the enemy formation from the bridge of Soul's Fury. "Sir, they have concentrated everything they have. This will not be like the previous battles." "I know," Admiral Taijin replied, "but numbers are not everything." "Signal the fleet. Begin Operation Final Solution." Dr. So Young had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Her analysis of Karathi psychology, biology, and technology had revealed the perfect way to destroy their empire once and for all. "Sir," she reported to the Admiral, "I have finished the psychological warfare program. When we broadcast this, it will turn their own people against them. Show me." The holographic display filled with images and data Dr. So Young had compiled. The Karathi Empire is held together by fear and the belief that they are unbeatable. But we have proven that belief is false. This broadcast will remind every Karathi citizen of that fact. Admiral Taijin reviewed the program and smiled. It was brilliant. Not just a propaganda broadcast, but a complete psychological assault designed to shatter the Karathis' confidence in their own empire. "Begin transmission," he ordered. Across the Karathi system, every communication device suddenly activated. The voices of human translators speaking perfect Karathi filled the air, accompanied by video footage of the battles at Kepler 442b and Fortress Kalar. "Citizens of the Karathi Empire," the broadcast began, "your leaders have lied to you. They told you that your species was the strongest in the galaxy, but humans destroyed your fleets without losing a single ship. They said your empire was unbeatable, but your greatest fortress fell in hours." The broadcast showed recordings of Karathi ships being torn apart by human weapons, images of Supreme War Leader Kethmore's own commanders fleeing in terror, video of slave processing facilities burning on Fortress Kalar. "Your empire is built on the suffering of innocent people," the voices continued. "Billions of slaves taken from their families. Entire species wiped out for profit. Your leaders grow rich while you live in fear of their displeasure." But the most devastating part was what came next. Dr. So Young had discovered records of secret Karathi government communications, messages between the high command discussing how they viewed their own people as expendable. "This is what your Supreme War Leader really thinks of you," the broadcast said, and played recordings of Kethmore calling ordinary Karathi citizens useful tools and acceptable losses. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the Karathi homeworld, riots broke out as citizens realized their own government despised them. Military units began deserting as soldiers questioned why they were fighting for leaders who saw them as disposable. Supreme War Leader Kethmore watched his empire collapse from the bridge of his flagship. Half his fleet had already abandoned their positions. The other half was in chaos as crews mutinied against their officers. "Destroy the human ships," he screamed at his remaining commanders. "Kill them all!" But there were not enough loyal ships left to mount an effective attack. When the Karathi fleet finally moved against the humans, it was a disorganized mob of frightened and demoralized vessels. The battle was over in minutes. Human weapons, now refined and improved from weeks of combat, cut through the Karathi formation like a hot knife through butter. Gravity bombs created black holes that swallowed entire enemy squadrons. Kinetic bombardment cannons fired rounds that punched through multiple ships at once. Captain Minho coordinated the assault with cold precision. "Target their command ships first. Cut off their leadership and the rest will surrender." One by one, the Karathi flagships disappeared in brilliant explosions. Supreme War Leader Kethmore's own vessel was the last to die. its hull cracked open by a direct hit from Sol's Fury's main guns. With their leaders dead and their fleet destroyed, the Karathi Empire simply ceased to exist. Across their territory, colony worlds declared independence. Military bases were abandoned. Slave markets closed as their operators fled in terror, but Admiral Tae-jin was not finished. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "We are going to visit every former Karathi stronghold, every slave market, every military base. We are going to make sure this empire can never rise again." What followed was not a war, but a systematic dismantling of everything the Karathi had built. Human fleets appeared at dozens of systems, liberating slave populations and destroying military facilities. Resistance was minimal. Most Karathi forces surrendered immediately when they saw human ships approaching. Sergeant Wu Jin led liberation efforts on world after world, freeing prisoners who had been enslaved for decades. The stories they told made even hardened soldiers angry. Entire families separated and sold to different owners. Children raised as livestock. Adults worked to death in mines and factories. "Sir," Wu Jin reported after clearing a slave processing facility on the planet Karathi 7, "we found records of over 2 million beings processed through this facility alone." The scale of their operation was massive. Dr. So Young documented everything they found, creating a comprehensive record of Karathi crimes that would be distributed to every species in the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. The Karathi had not just been raiders. They had been running an industrial-scale slavery operation that spanned dozens of star systems. 6 months after the first attack on Kepler 442b, Admiral Tae-jin's fleet returned to Earth. They had visited 47 Karathi systems, liberated over 10 million slaves, and destroyed every trace of the empire that had once terrorized the galaxy. The victory celebration was subdued. The humans had won, but the cost and suffering had been enormous. Too many innocent people had died before Earth could respond. Admiral Tae-jin stood before the Earth Defense Committee to give his final report. "The Karathi Empire no longer exists," he said simply. "Their military is destroyed. Their government is gone. Their territory has been liberated and returned to the species they conquered." "And the survivors?" asked the committee chairman. "The few remaining Karathi have been scattered across the galaxy. Some have asked for asylum on various worlds. Others have simply disappeared. They pose no further threat." But the real impact of the war was not just the destruction of one empire. News of humanity's victory spread to every corner of the galaxy. Other aggressive species suddenly found reasons to avoid human space. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates became safe overnight. Captain Minho, now promoted to admiral, established a new Earth policy regarding galactic security. "We will not interfere in local conflicts," he announced to the Galactic Council. "But any species that attacks humans or our allies will face the full might of Earth's military. We do not negotiate with slavers, pirates, or conquerors." 3 other aggressive species had already canceled their expansion plans after hearing about the Karathi's fate. Back on Kepler 442b, Hyunsu and Daun watched as the mining colony was rebuilt, bigger and better than before. The Vellani colonists worked alongside human engineers, but the relationship between the species had changed. The gentle aliens now understood that their human allies were capable of incredible violence when protecting those they cared about. Ji-woo, back at her communications post, monitored long-range transmissions from across the galaxy. The chatter was all about humans now. Some species spoke of them with respect, others with fear, all of them with caution. "Sir," she reported to Hyunsu, "I am picking up communications from the Zephyrian Empire. They were planning to invade the Tau Ceti system next month. They just canceled the operation and are withdrawing their fleets to defensive positions." Hyunsu smiled. The Zephyrians were another species of conquerors, almost as bad as the Karathi had been. If they were backing down, it meant the message had been received. Dr. So Young published her complete study of the Karathi War 6 months later. The document was translated into every known language and distributed throughout the galaxy. It included detailed analysis of human military capabilities, psychological profiles of aggressive species, and recommendations for peaceful species on how to defend themselves. But the most important part was the conclusion. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy. We seek only to protect our people and our allies. But any species that mistakes our peaceful intentions for weakness will learn the same lesson the Karathi learned. Earth does not negotiate with those who threaten us. We eliminate them. Admiral Taejin retired a year later, but his legacy lived on. The Earth Defense Force was reorganized around the lessons learned in the Karathi War. New weapons were developed, new tactics were refined, and new alliances were formed with species that had been liberated from Karathi slavery. The Vellani became humanity's closest partners, their peaceful nature balanced by Earth's military strength. Together, they established trade routes and colonies that spread human influence across dozens of star systems. But the most important change was in the galaxy itself. For the first time in centuries, aggressive species found themselves hesitating before